Before we came on air, I spoke with Maria, who is also, of course, the MP for Lewes.
It's twofold, really. So if harassment in the workplace does happen, employers now have a duty to deal with that. And if they don't, there can be action taken against an employer. But also it does send a very clear message out that harassment in the workplace is not acceptable. And, some people dismiss that this is happening, but only a few weeks ago we heard from female surgeons about their experience. And so it clearly is a problem across many workplaces.
Now, this is a private member's bill. It was put forward by a Liberal Democrat MP. Was tackling workplace sexual harassment, as you say, a big issue, not something that should have been prioritised by the Conservatives earlier?
Well, it's called, we worked with Vera very closely, it's called a government handout bill. So the government was very supportive of that and we worked very closely with Vera on that. And most private members' bills never become law, and it's only with government support allowing time in the House of Commons and the House of Lords that they're able to pass through. So it's very unusual. You only get one or two a year that ever make it through the House of Commons. So the government absolutely supports this. And we had a lot of opposition actually in the House of Lords to these changes. And it was with the government whips and government ministers in the law that we managed to get the Lords to compromise to get the bill through. So it's, this is really a good example of cross-party working to make law that will benefit particularly women, but not exclusively women who do experience harassment in the workplace.
Well, there was a lot of discussion about one element of this bill. That was a section which made employers liable for harassment of their employees by third parties. So that would be customers or suppliers. Now, that was scrapped, and so the bill's been watered down slightly. Do you agree with that?
Well, I think there was a concern, particularly in the House of Lords and for some MPs in the House of Commons as well, about free speech. So what that would mean is if you were in a pub, for example, and one of the customers were having a conversation that an employee may find distressing or hurtful, would an employer be really liable for that? Or are we censoring what people talk about, whether that's in a hospital, whether that's in a cafe, whether that's a football club, for example? And we just, the House of Lords felt that was kind of teetering on banning free speech. So we came to a compromise on that. But I think employers have very strong responsibilities now because of this bill. It should get royal assent in the coming days, so it will become law very soon. But there will also be a 12-month lead-in period to these changes so that employers can get on board in terms of what their responsibilities are. And hopefully, we engender this culture change rather than having to actually use the law if harassment occurs in the first place. So there was a concern about free speech, and could employers really be responsible for what customers or other people using their facilities or premises or business were saying?
It's an interesting one, isn't it? Because this puts more responsibility onto employers. Now we're at a time when many are already struggling. Is it going to be a burden too much? Is it fair to expect them to provide training or to carry out investigations into harassment? Is that going to be too much at a difficult time for some workplace employers?
Well, we know that people do leave the workplace because of harassment. They're often fearful of raising concerns, or if they do raise concerns, they're often dismissed. And actually what I hear from employers is they will try anything to try and keep good staff. And very often people will not raise this with their employers for fear of the difficulties that kind of might follow. So actually most responsible employers will want to do this because they want to keep their workforce happy and supported, and knowing that you can go to your employer now if you're experiencing harassment in the workplace and they have to take some action about it will actually improve, I think, the working lives for people, but also will mean that employers are able to retain their staff. So for the example of the NHS, where we've seen these female surgeons who have been harassed in the workplace, they may have not raised these. I heard from many surgeons who didn't raise this because they were worried about the impact on their career further down the line. They will now know that their employer has a duty to act and hopefully will feel more confident to come forward. So it should make the workplace a better place for everyone, including employers, because they'll be able to get a handle on what's happening in their workplace and retain their staff.
Because that's shocking, isn't it, that people never felt comfortable, that with the surgeons, as you highlight there, it's shocking that these women didn't feel comfortable coming forward. And so really this goes beyond legislation. It's about hopefully changing the whole culture.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And Parliament, we've got many stories in Parliament as well of employees who, whether it's sexual harassment or verbal harassment, have put in complaints. And even Parliament has in the past been very slow to act. And Parliament, will have a responsibility as an employer to thousands of people to take those responsibilities seriously too. So, this is a reminder to employers, large or small, then actually they need to be making their workplaces as conducive as possible and supporting their employees. That does require some extra work, and that's why there's a 12-month lead-in time. But, many people will dismiss this as legislation that's not needed. But we've had quite a lot of examples, even in the media, of workplace practices that are far from ideal. So I think we've all got a responsibility to look at our workplace and say, if something happened, would our employees feel comfortable to come forward and talk to us about it?